Greetings, mere mortals, and welcome to Half the Battle. October is Monster Month since I've taken over. What's that? There are no monsters in G.I.Joe? It's all soldiers fighting terrorists? Oh, my sweet summer child. I have such sights to show you. Today, we're talking about zombies. Next to vampires, they're the world's most favorite dead thing that just won't stay dead. Well, that and disco.
In 1992, zombies invaded the G.I. Joe line. And not just ordinary zombies, but Toxo zombies. This figure has all half-original body parts. I don't mean that half his parts are original and half taken from other figures. I mean that they retooled, not just repainted, most of his parts from a previous figure. So, he's both a zombie and a Frankenstein.
I don't care that Frankenstein was the name of the creator.
This guy is a complete retool of that Toxo Viper toy that came out the year before. One of the hands and feet has been horribly mutated. His breastplate has holes and cracks in it, and even his waist is damaged. He even has a chunk of his ass missing. The best part, though? That's the helmet. His cracked face shield has a part missing, revealing a hideous mutated face. Toxo Vipers and Toxo Zombies were part of the Eco Warrior subline. So, like all figures from that set, they change color when sprayed with water. The bad thing about that is, after enough time, the change becomes permanent. But in case of that Toxo Viper, I don't mind at all. Water-damaged figures add a sort of unofficial middle stage between Viper and Zombie for added effect. You can see a regular Toxo Viper decay to the point of no return. And then there's nothing left but an angry, terrifying monster. An angry, terrifying monster that's pink and bright green.
Yeah, I can't overlook that.
The only zombie in the original G.I. Joe line, and they give him this color scheme. As both a fan of subdued coloring and as a horror fan, I am disappointed.
No monster in bright, happy colors is ever scary.
And when you're down here with me,
You float down! I stand corrected.
This gets worse when you look at the card art. Here, it is clear that they were basing the design of the original color scheme of the Toxo Viper. But the figure ended up looking like this bright monstrosity. I'm just gonna ignore the accessories when it comes to this guy. I mean, it's a figure stand and a water cannon. Well, I say water cannon. It's a mini water pistol with just one charge for the kids to use. How terrifying. And yeah, that's what zombies use, right?
What? You don't remember all those scenes in The Walking Dead where the zombies are running around with super soakers?
The Toxo zombie didn't really get his due until this year, when another version of the character was made, exclusively for the 2014 G.I.Joe convention in Dallas. This version is closely based on the color scheme of the Toxo Viper, and looks leaps and bounds better. Of course, it's a convention exclusive, so good luck finding one.
And if you do, it'll cost you an arm and a leg. Literally, maybe.
As far as I can tell, Toxo zombies never showed up in the cartoon or in the comics, so we've only got the file card to go on. Toxo zombies seem to be the natural progression of what happens when you screw up in Cobra enough as a lowly trooper. You start off as, I don't know, a Viper or something, and then you do something stupid and end up a Toxo Viper as punishment. The Toxo Vipers are known as the Leaky Suit Brigade, by the way, so that should tell you something. And if you don't improve, you become a permanent member of this happy little troop. Due to the leaky suits and the consequent exposure to all types of chemical, radioactive, and other waste, they get turned into zombies. Man, these Cobra guys really get the shaft when it comes to hazardous waste, getting turned into the living dead and all. Usually, rolling around in toxic waste gives you neat superpowers, or turns you into Ninja Turtles, or even gives you superpowers without turning you into a freak of nature. If you're in Cobra, though, yeah, you might as well work for the Umbrella Corporation. The file card goes on to say that the only traits of humanity they have left is a desire for useless personal goods and unhealthy food.
Wait, was that social commentary on a G.I. Joe file card about zombies? Yes! And actually, it's very appropriate!
Zombies have been used as a metaphor for mindless consumerism. That's why the godfather of zombies, George A. Romero, set parts of his 1978 zombie classic, Dawn of the Dead, in a shopping mall. It's nice to see a nod to this in the file card. They clearly did the research on this one. The 2014 convention file card takes out these references, though, and instead has an explanation of their zombification being due to Compound Z, an element that's probably based on the T-virus from Resident Evil. This card also states the zombies retain their combat skills and fighting speed, setting them further apart from the original. Yeah, the original Toxo zombie seems to be based on the traditional, slow-moving, mindless zombie type, while the 2014 one is the fast-moving, rage-fueled kind. A sign of the times, I suppose. There were a few more zombie figures in the newer G.I. Joe toy lines. The 2014 convention set also had a zombified Steel Brigade figure, and in 2011 there was even a Zombie Viper. But I can't say too much about them because they are pretty rare and hideously expensive when you do find them.
And Timmer is far too much of a cheapskate to spring for them. No, seriously, you have no idea how much of a skinflint he is. I mean, he uses a bucket for a camera stand, for Christ's sake. Next to him, Scrooge McDuck is a bloody philanthropist.
So, that was the Toxo zombie. An interesting idea to be sure. Shame about the pink and bright green.
Join me next week when we'll be diving deep, deep to see the horrors below. I mean, he uses a bucket for I'm sweating my ass off in here. Greetings, mortals, and welcome once again to Half the Battle. You know, a lot of different fears can be boiled down to the same thing. Fear of the unknown.
When somebody says they're afraid of the dark, or when children say they are afraid of what's in their closet or under their bed, it's really the unknown they fear that lurks within that darkness.
And do you know what, besides darkness, also houses the unknown?
The ocean.
Who knows what lurks under the sea?
Under the sea, under the sea. Darling, it's better down where it's wetter. Take it from me.
Hey, don't ruin the atmosphere!
But it's true. From the first time a child finds a jellyfish washed up on the beach, they know. They know there's something in there. Something strange. Something frightening. And those that make horror and suspense their job will gratefully make use of this fear. It's no coincidence that Lovecraft's great Cthulhu and his abominations resided in a sunken city, or that the first blockbuster was about a terrifying killer that strikes from below the waterline.
Cobra had something that lurked below, too! Okay, you know what? Time out!
Look, 99.9% of the time, this show will go with the American name of a character. I mean, most of the audience is American, and the names tend to be better anyway. In this case, though, we're not calling him Hydro Viper. We're gonna go with the name he got in Belgium and Holland, because it's leaps and bounds better and more fitting. Meet the Cobra Sea Devil.
Yes, that's much more like it.
This figure was from 1988, with all original body parts. One was even a little more original than others. Yes, your eyes are immediately drawn to his left hand. It is open with webbing between the fingers. And I'll let you in on the secret early.
That's not a glove.
The other thing that strikes me when looking at this guy is the expression on his face. Well, I mean, the expression in his eyes, really. Dude does not look happy, does he? But he doesn't look angry either. A good description would be that he's sad but resigned to his fate. And we'll soon learn that's very appropriate. Now, you might be thinking, He's got a webbed hand, but he doesn't really look like a monster, does he? That's why you need his accessories.
Especially his helmet.
Sometimes accessories really make the action figure, and the Sea Devil is a prime example of this. Now that's what I call monstrous. And we're not even done. The icing on the cake are his flippers. That's not ordinary diving footwear now, is it? Those are hideous claws. These things are removable, but honestly, why would you want to? Much better to just pretend they are part of his body, like the webbed hand. Yes, I consider these things to be his actual feet. He comes with a knife, but no ordinary knife. It looks more menacing, more evil than an ordinary knife. The accessories sorta go downhill from there, but only because of the awesomeness of the helmet and the flippers. He's got a standard spear gun and oxygen tank. The tank connects to his helmet with two short hoses. And let me tell you, these things are a pain in the ass to put on and get them to stay on. I feel they even take away from the general design of the figure.
His final accessory is the most baffling one.
He comes with a pet manta ray.
I mean, why?
It's weird for a few reasons. First of all, the toy line had a habit of adding animals to the figures just for the hell of it. Sometimes it was logical, like a dog handler should have a dog. And you could even make the case for the sailor having a parrot. But other times, they just included anything that happened to fit the theme of the figure. Like Undertow, who came with a freaking barracuda, because he's a diver. Same goes with the Sea Devil. He came with a manta ray because...
Ocean, I guess?
That brings me to my second point. Why a manta ray? Because manta rays are completely harmless. If anything, the evil sea monster should have come with a stingray. Those are actually dangerous. And in either case, it's not like they'd be a pet that would follow them around and obey commands. This was the only toy of the Sea Devil ever made. He's one of the few characters that, so far, has not gotten a new toy even in the new lines. A real shame.
So, let's take a look at the character and find out why he's a Monster Month. I mean, he seems to be just a man, but isn't man the greatest monster of them all?
Well, no, that's still Cthulhu. Anyway, sea devils do start off as ordinary men. They were, in fact, eels. Cobra's elite frogmen. Only, these guys volunteered to be surgically altered to be more efficient underwater fighters. They're better at withstanding underwater pressure and are less likely to suffer from decompression sickness. They had those webs implanted between their fingers, and their fat production is stimulated to give them natural insulation. The long-term effects of all these procedures are known to be psychologically destabilizing, which would explain the look on their faces. And they volunteered for this.
I checked. The word volunteer isn't in quotation marks, even though I expected it to be.
So, a Sea Devil is an ordinary guy who voluntarily lets himself get turned into a monster, knowing it could drive him mad.
And you know what? They didn't go far enough.
They should have gone whole hog with these guys. Instead of still having oxygen tanks with those distracting tubes, why not give them the ability to breathe underwater? Graft some gills on there. Hell, there was an entire episode of the cartoon dedicated to just such a Cobra project. By the way, the Sea Devil, or Hydro Viper as you foolishly call him in the United States, did have one more interesting feature on his file card. He's the only character I've come across so far that has a secondary name in brackets next to the official name. He's also known as a demon of the deep. Now that's just awesome! The character was from 1988, so sadly he fell between the Sunbow and D cartoon series, meaning he didn't appear in either. And I couldn't find him in the comic either, though apparently he did show up in the English Action Force comic series, where it's inferred that Sea Devils don't wear scuba gear. That's just their skin.
I approve of this interpretation.
So, that was the Sea Devil or Hydro Viper. An almost tragic character with a great story to tell. Too bad his story never got told in the cartoons or comics. Hell, I'd say a character like this could carry an entire movie, G.I.Joe or not.
Join me next week, mortals, when things are gonna get hairy. You know, sitting in the dark, with this mask on, trying to read a script. Sometimes I think I don't think these things through. Greetings, mortals! We're finishing off Monster Month with a character that has the word monster right there in his name! Essentially.
Meet the Monstro Viper. Yes, this isn't your typical G.I. Joe figure, now is it? There are reasons for this, of course. The toy was part of the Mega Monsters line. Two characters that were made specifically to fight the Mega Marines. The other was the Bio Viper, if you recall. Timmer finally found his. It was hiding behind a ton of Transformers and had two of its tentacles cut off. I don't think he liked it very much. This big fella was released in 1993, and it goes without saying he had all original body parts. Despite his size, he had limited movement compared to ordinary Joe figures. He has no knee or elbow joints. He has no ball joints whatsoever.
Yes, I did just now realize how that sounded. I'll give you a second to laugh.
Now, because he has no ball joints connecting his waist to his legs,
Oh god, the imagery is just getting worse.
Yeah, his legs can only move back and forth because they're swivel joints. Same goes for his arms. They only move up and down, and his head can only turn sideways. He does have a swivel joint in his left arm, which is better than nothing. He's also one of the only figures from the original line with wrist articulation, so that's something. Too bad it's just on the left hand. You could say this entire figure is a gimmick, and you'd be right. But he has two extra gimmicks anyway. His right arm is spring-loaded, so he can strike an opponent in a downwards movement. It's meant to be similar to a bear attack.
Then there's his second gimmick. Dear Cthulhu Almighty, his second gimmick.
You may remember that the main gimmick of the Mega Marines was their Play-Doh armor. Armor made out of Play-Doh. Yeah. At the time, you would be forgiven for thinking that's as stupid as it got. You would have been wrong, though. This guy also came with Play-Doh. Well, bio-armor, as Hasbro called it. But it wasn't used to give him armor. Oh, no.
Are you ready for this?
His chest opened up to reveal a compartment you could squish the Play-Doh into. It's supposed to be a bomb the Monstro Viper creates in his stomach. Okay, we've seen some weird crap on this show, but this definitely takes the cake. Let's just move on to the look of the figure itself. In a word, hairy. Look at that chest hair. Look at the feet. But most of all, look at his frickin' back. This guy makes George the Animal Steel look positively subdued. I do have to admit, the hair is nicely detailed, as are the veins on his exposed skin. They do add to the look of the figure. His head sorta reminds me of a bat, and at the same time of an orc, which is weird. He also has a piece of electronics grafted to his skin, which adds a nice touch. The pants, well, they are orange, but not bright orange, and they remind me of the Incredible Hulk, making them look like they ripped as the man grew into the monster. He came with a gun and a flail. The ball and chain are pretty cool, but why would a guy that looks like this need a gun?
I mean, dude's got Play-Doh!
Overall, it's a pretty cool, intimidating looking figure. It was also the only version of Monstro Viper ever made, old toy line or new, probably because of the uniqueness of the design. Overall, they did manage to convey the feeling of an out-of-control beast, ready to pounce. Though I'm not that wild about the bright yellow hair. With that, let's talk about the man, or monster's character. Straight off the bat, he never showed up in the cartoon or the comic, so there's nothing to say there. That just leaves the file card. And Monstro Vipers, like the other two characters we talked about this week, also start off as ordinary men. Range Vipers in this case. Range Vipers are Cobra survival troopers. They were ordered to volunteer for DNA experiments. Yeah, now that may sound like a contradiction in terms, but they did put quotation marks around the word volunteer this time. They were sent to Dr. Mindbender.
Well, actually, it was a clone of Dr. Mindbender who. You know what? Long story. Maybe some other time.
Anyway, they had their DNA spliced with grizzly bears, Bigfoot, and werewolves. I point out only one of those things exists, but we are talking about guys that look like this. Naturally, alterations like these tend to make a person a little unbalanced. Well, I say unbalanced, it's more like becoming an uncontrollable rage beast. Since even Cobra isn't stupid enough to unleash such a monster on themselves, this is where the electronic patch comes in. It's a biogenetic processor that gives them complete control of the beast. You know, if this character had shown up in any stories, I'm pretty sure this would have blown up in their face somewhere down the line.
As is, there was some precedent for having the Monstro Viper. It comes from the cartoon series.
In one episode, Mindbender does turn Cobra troopers into werebeasts, including werewalruses, because of course he did. The file card has one more aspect to it. There's a little diagram explaining the various elements of the figure at the bottom, and there are some choice bits there. For example, that Play-Doh is explained as being a stomach regurgitating gut bomb, implying that he somehow, I have no idea how that's supposed to work, creates a bomb in his stomach and then projectile vomits it towards his enemies.
Now there's a mental image for you.
You know, you can say a lot about werewolf movies, but I don't think any of them ever used vomit as a weapon. Would have made Twilight a lot more interesting, though. Also, in the diagram, the line pointing out the gut bomb points straight at his crotch for some reason.
And you know what? The gut bomb isn't even the most baffling thing.
His spring-loaded arm is explained as being a thermonuclear arm mechanism, implying he has a nuclear reactor crammed in him somewhere. This guy is just awesomely impossible. The rest of the diagram mostly tells you what part came from where, like his right hand is grizzly bear, and his feet are, of course, from Bigfoot. It's also explained why his head has reminded me of a bat this entire time, since he has night vision bat eyes.
Hang on, I have to use a clip here. I have notes!
Well, I should point out that bats aren't actually blind. That's just a myth. In fact, they can see quite well during the daytime. But their night vision, well, that's so poor that they rely on sonar instead.
So, giving a monster bat eyes to see better at night would be completely freaking useless. This has been your pedantic moment of the week.
So that was the Monstro Viper. Overall, it was a character better in the idea than in the execution. Don't get me wrong, it's not really a bad figure, just a little too weird. Though you could say that was the point.
Well, that's about it for me this year. Next week is Halloween week, so Timmer will be taking over again. But as long as there are monsters in G.I. Joe, I'll be back.